Hi, everybody. Welcome to this live. I hope you are staying safe and well wherever you are. Let us know where you're dialing in from, and please make sure to ask questions throughout this conversation. I'm Rana Kaliouby. I'm co-founder and CEO of Affectiva. We are on a mission to humanize technology by bringing emotional intelligence to our devices. And I fundamentally believe that this is not only going to change how we interface and interact with our technology, but fundamentally how we as humans connect and communicate with one another. It is the holiday season, and of course, every year we all look forward to Christmas ads. It's a great way to kick off the holiday season, and the top brands, the department stores, the supermarkets are always competing for the top spot as it comes to these Christmas ads. They're especially big in the UK, and we've been doing a lot of work kind of exploring what that advertising, Christmas advertising landscape looks like this year. And you can learn a lot from what makes creative advertising effective by kind of taking a closer look at these ads. So I'm super excited for this live today because we will be watching some of these ads and dissecting them and workshopping them together. And joining me for this conversation is Graham Page, Managing Global Director of the Media Analytics business at Affectiva. Hi, Graham.
Hi, Rana. Thanks for inviting us here. Thanks, everybody, for listening. Looking forward to the session.
And Lynne Deason, who is the Head of Creative Excellence at Kantar UK. Hi, Lynne. Lynne is in a very festive mood.
Why not? We have to celebrate when we get the opportunity.
That's awesome. So Lynne, actually, you and Graham have been working together for many, many years. So tell us a little bit more about your work at Kantar and how Affectiva fits in.
So I look after creative effectiveness for the UK. So I create a lot of our thought leadership, I write points of view, and I help build the expertise in the team. So as a business, we want to make sure that we're helping our clients with the issues and the challenges that they're facing right now. And our goal is to help them create the most effective communications in the area that I specialize in. So I had the pleasure and the delight of working with Graham many years ago on our partnership with Unilever, exploring how understanding in greater depth the emotional reactions that people experience as they watch an ad can influence creative effectiveness. And we saw that taking that into account helps us predict effectiveness more accurately in terms of the sales that we see, but also it helps us guide optimization more and cut downs because we can understand in more depth how people are responding to a creative and what's working and what isn't. So I love ads, and Christmas ads are probably the most exciting to work with. So yeah, this is a great time of year.
That's awesome. And Graham, do you want to say a little bit about your role at Affectiva and perhaps how you came to that?
Yep, absolutely. So as Rana said, I run the media analytics division here at Affectiva. That's the part of the business that's dedicated to working with the world's biggest advertisers and media businesses to help them understand, particularly on an emotional level, whether their campaigns are connecting with people or not, and then, as Lynne was saying, kind of working with businesses such as Kantar to help their clients optimize the effectiveness of their brand and marketing communications, and also other areas such as content, and we get involved in qual research and other areas as well. So yeah, it's certainly an interesting role. I used to work at Kantar for a long time, and I was originally one of Affectiva's biggest clients, and then a year or so ago jumped ship and working with the business right now to expand the use cases and take that emotional insight out to more people.
So Kantar and Affectiva have been working together obviously for many years. Graham, you championed that at the Kantar side. But this year, one of the projects that we're collaborating on is this Christmas ad, the kind of deep dive. So Lynne, tell us more about this research.
So this is an annual project for us. I think it's in about its 6th year now. We tend to look at about 20 of the top UK ads. So Christmas advertising here in the UK is a massive thing. It's a bit like the Super Bowl, for those of you in the States that are familiar with that. And what we do is we leverage our Link Now technology that we have at Kantar, where we expose people to a Christmas ad And then because we understand what the key dimensions of effectiveness are, we can ask them to tell us how they feel about them using rating scales, but also in their own words. And then, of course, we use Affectiva's facial coding technology to understand the emotions that they're experiencing as they watch the ad. So it allows us to both predict and measure how creatively effective they are. As well. It's really great.
So Graham, can you give us the Affectiva side of this? How do we set up these projects, and what do they look like for somebody that's consuming the ad?
Yep, absolutely. So we work with Kantar, and this project was a great case in point where, as part of the research process, people are asked obviously to watch an ad and then go on to answer a set of validated questions that Kantar have developed over many years to help predict in-market effectiveness. At the point where people watch the ads, they're asked if they consent to be filmed, and if they do, and only if they do, then they're recorded while they watch, and we then use our technology to analyze the facial expressions that they show as they watch the ad, and from that we can add additional insight about how emotionally engaged people were. Did the ad connect? Did it not connect? Did it evoke the emotions that were intended? And that's obviously hugely insightful, both to help combined with the survey answers of when people describe how they felt and how they reacted. It's helpful to then really understand the emotional response in the moment, so we can help understand how to optimize or really kind of how to learn from success.
Lynne, which ads came out at the top, and how does it compare to last year's advertising too?
So this year was super fascinating. I think there was even more anticipation, certainly from the industry, about which ads would come out top, and also what the ads would look and feel like this year. It was a real challenge for brands and the creative agencies to come up with really great stuff. So the top ad this year was Coke's "Holidays Are Coming" truck ad. That ad's been around since 1995. But why people love it so much is the nostalgic element of it. So it is the sheer fact that it's been around since 1995. It's really enjoyable. It kindles all those feelings of joy and excitement for Christmas. And then this year it did the same. It garnered that joy of Christmas. And this year, I think more than ever, people needed that. So we know that at times of crisis, from a psychological point of view, then nostalgia is something that people really lean into, because things that are very familiar to you give you comfort emotionally. So what was a great ad, its performance was heightened even further this year. So yes, Coca-Cola did it again.
Was nostalgia a theme that we saw in other ads this season?
Not as much. There was a lot of discussion around whether it would be a big thing this year, and I don't think we saw it coming through massively. What we did see, though, was some brands stuck with the creative idea that they've got, and we know that coherence and consistency across executions is really important to gain the maximum effectiveness from your ads.
Yeah.
So yes, some people stuck by that rather than necessarily leaning into nostalgia specifically. There were lots of different approaches this year. That's why it was so exciting.
Yeah, and I think what really struck me though about this year was just how emotionally positive the ads tended to be this year. I mean, they often are at Christmas, but I think it was actually really nice to see that while advertisers may have taken a variety of different approaches, they by and large really stuck with a kind of uplifting, feel good, kind of positive approach to advertising, which perhaps we might not have necessarily expected this year.
Yeah, because it's been obviously a really challenging and tough year, and we've been asking the question: is COVID the Grinch that stole Christmas? Right. So, Graham, do you think it is? The Grinch that stole Christmas? Well,
as I say, I think it definitely didn't. Thankfully, I think there was certainly some trepidation that we might see, a lot of socially distanced Christmases depicted in the advertising this year. Lots of people sharing their Christmas dinner over Zoom. But what was really interesting was that actually a lot of people didn't necessarily choose to go down a route where they referenced COVID, and actually instead and even if they did, they tended to do it in a way which had a much more kind of positive view of things. So it was interesting that, I always feel like the advertisers did a great job this year at tapping into kind of what people really wanted out of Christmas advertising this year. They could have gone down a negative route, but actually they kind of spotted that people, at the end of a really tough year, people wanted to feel better. They're desperate for kind of Christmas to come along. They're desperate to see the back of 2020, and a lot of the ad managed to kind of tap into that. So I think to pick up Lynne's point, that Coke ad that did really well. It's the starting gun for the kind of Christmas ad season in many ways, and I think the fact that it did so well suggests to me people were really looking forward to the Christmas season. But also, you look at the other Coke ad that did really well in the research, which was the Coke letter spot, which kind of tells a very non-COVID story. It's a classic Coke story about kind of Coke enabling a father to get back to his daughter for Christmas. Again, people just really responded well to a real classic Christmas story there, and I can kind of. And that's people were they're really looking forward to Christmas this year. So you saw that in the response to a lot of ads. But even ads that did talk about COVID actually still managed to I think walk an interesting line. There's an ad for Tesco's in the UK, which actually we should show in a second. Which walked a really interesting line, in that it managed to talk about COVID, but it also did it in a way that captured how we all feel. It talked about captured the sense that we've all been trying really hard, but we don't necessarily follow all the rules, and it talked about COVID in a humorous way, which I think is a pretty good balance. So actually, why don't I show that ad, and then we can talk about it a bit more.
And for those who don't know, Tesco is a huge supermarket chain in the UK.
Yeah, number one.
The number one. Yeah, I remember from my time living there.
Yeah.
Hopefully you can see the ad. I'll just play it now.
I gave my sister a really terrible haircut. What if I'm on the naughty list?
Relax. After this year, Tesco says there is no naughty list. So take that, Kay. You deserve it.
I may have bought too many loo rolls.
So did I.
And me.
I once forgot to sing happy birthday when I washed my hands.
I didn't teach them physics or math. Or geography.
Guys, it's fine. There's no naughty list. So tuck in.
I didn't donate to Captain Tom.
What? No.
I did do a charity bagel.
I might have gone on holiday.
Oh, Santa. Well, have a mince pie. And Britain, you have all the treats you want, okay? Because this year at Tesco, there is no naughty list.
That's awesome. I love how they tapped into people's feelings of guilt throughout this year in all sorts of ways, especially hogging the toilet rolls, which was definitely a universal issue, I think. So how did people respond?
Yeah, sorry, Lynne, go ahead.
Really positively. So I think touching on something that Graham mentioned earlier about COVID and the impact it's had, we saw a lot of advertising, or a big wave of advertising in the UK, where brands were saying they were there for people without actually making a tangible difference. And we saw earlier that when humour was used well and appropriately, it responded brilliantly. And I did personally fear that the Grinch might steal the Christmas spirit from Christmas advertising in the UK this year. So I'm so relieved to see this ad taking a humorous approach and really leveraging the power of insight. They totally tapped into the zeitgeist of the moment and those little guilts, as you say, Rana, that we've all, blamed ourselves for. And who doesn't want to not be on the naughty list this Christmas?
Exactly.
Yeah, people loved it, and it was also brilliantly branded. So because Tesco was at the heart of it, was very effective for them, and they've also leveraged that idea across platforms. And we know that can be a key factor of success. When you've got a great idea, knowing that you can make it work in a digital environment or via emails or however you might want to activate it can really help increase effectiveness.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Graham, do you want to add anything?
Yeah, I was just going to add. I mean, you mentioned, we mentioned, some of the ads earlier in the year around the kind of pandemic. I think it's, we did a piece of analysis of the Christmas ads this year based on the work that we did together with Kantar. And what was interesting was to kind of look at the emotional trajectory of the ads and kind of where did the ads and leave people feeling in a better place, or did they leave them in a worse place? And certainly in some of the, when you compare to say some of the ads that were aired around the start of the pandemic in particular, where brands were understandably seeking to kind of reassure people. Interestingly, those ads weren't quite as reassuring on average as we might have thought. Those ads tended to actually not necessarily leave people in a better place, unless they were talking about a really kind of concrete step that the brand was taking to help. The Christmas ads this year have been very different. They've had a really strong, on average, positive emotional trajectory. People are left feeling better, which is, great from just a kind of a societal point of view. That's nice of advertisers to leave us that way. But it's also from a brand and kind of effectiveness point of view, an important thing. If, as Lynne was saying, ads are well branded, then leaving people on a high, leaving people with some positive associations, actually, I think has very good implications for effectiveness, because we know that emotions, and especially positive emotions associated with a brand, lead to more sales effectiveness. So yeah, it was really, I think, a positive thing to see the way that the advertising around this Christmas really kind of left people in a positive place.
It also strikes me, this interaction between narrative, but also how do you weave in the brand so that it's, and Tesco's, did this really well. But do we have other examples where maybe that balance wasn't like exactly struck?
I think this is a challenge for brands and creative agencies at any time of year, but at Christmas it becomes even more challenging, because not only have you got the brand and what you're trying to say about it fighting for attention, you've also got Christmas fighting for attention. And so yes, as you say, Tesco did this very well. One of their key competitors, Sainsbury's, we saw didn't land that as effectively, and that although they had a great creative idea on paper, unfortunately people misinterpreted the idea and the brand didn't have a role in it. So yes, it is a big challenge, and it's one area where we tend to find ads at Christmas generally underperform.
Yeah. And it's kind of understandable that people really want to tell a great emotional story, but it is the key is that the emotional story needs to be about the brand or feature the brand as a kind of pivotal piece within that narrative. And when that happens, you get great branding. I think there's a perennial winner in these projects tends to be the supermarket Aldi, because they have a really strong branding device and a character called Kevin the Carrot, who's very strongly associated with them, and therefore if they tell a story about Kevin, then they get great branding. But they also tell emotional and powerful stories, and again that Aldi spot did pretty well this year, didn't it?
It did, yes. And I think what that shows us is just the range of ads that were effective this year. It wasn't just nostalgia. Yes, Coke hit the spot beautifully, triggering happiness, but Aldi with its sort of more fantasy anthropomorphic carrot roots, there were lots of different ways to crack the creative effectiveness thing at Christmas this year. And I think that's a really important learning for anyone thinking about making an ad at any point, is to be distinctive and do something different, and not try to copy other brands and what they found to be successful. You've got to do it in your way and in a really original way.
So one of my favorite ads, not from this season, but it's probably a couple of years old now, is the Amazon Imam and Priest ad. I found it really uplifting, and it's a very inspiring message, but also super tied to the Amazon brand. What about Amazon's Christmas ad this year? Do we have it lined up to?
Yep, if you bear with me a moment, I can share that. So we'll share that and take a quick look. So just one moment.
And while Graham is doing that, if you are listening in, please feel free to interact with us, ask questions. We'll be getting to those shortly. And also, if you haven't watched the ads, I think my team has been posting some of them. Do check them out. They're really awesome.
Whilst Graham's queuing at the ad, I can give you a bit of context about the ads that Amazon have used in previous Christmases. So they've had a singing box device where the Amazon box that we all know with the smiley face has come to life and been singing. So last year they were very successful with that. It was about everybody needs somebody, so that again they tapped into a really powerful human insight, and the singing boxes became a bit of a branding device for them. And this year, as you'll see just now, they took a really different approach. Very brave.
Indeed. And I should be able to share it now. Hopefully you can see the ad. Play it now.
Yes, we can see it.
Good evening. All schools across the country will close by the end of the week until further notice as coronavirus reached a point.
So do we have the responses? Can we actually take a look at how people responded to this?
We can. Funny you should mention that, Rana. So yeah, just share that. Hold on 1 second. So again, hopefully you can all see this. Again, so what you're looking at here is the moment by moment emotional response to that particular film. Here we're showing a summary measure which is called valence, which really represents the net kind of positivity people felt while they watched the ad. And you can see there's a lot of kind of highs and lows during this spot, and that's exactly what you might expect from what is a really powerful piece of emotional storytelling. So you can see that you have kind of some clear dips early in the ad as kind of the girl listens to the kind of news about COVID. We see a return in positivity while we're watching her kind of practice and rehearse. But again, you kind of see a real kind of dip as it becomes apparent that the show she's working towards and working so hard towards is being cancelled. So you do see kind of some real kind of poignancy to the story, but it's then really interesting to see the way that story resolves itself positively as kind of her sister kind of takes the decision to try and put on a local show. You can see the product being bought by the male character to kind of help put the spotlight on her. We see positivity there, and again you see a real kind of positive resolution as she puts on the show at the end. So it's a really interesting piece of emotional storytelling that really kind of captures people, but does talk about COVID in a sensitive way. But what's interesting here, I think, is that it is leaving people on a positive, on a high, as opposed to perhaps some of those ads we talked about earlier in the year, where there was a lot of kind of talk about the problems caused by COVID, but the resolution didn't perhaps quite deliver in the way that this one does.
One of the things that really struck me about this ad is obviously the diversity, right? Like she's a young woman of color who's a ballet dancer. Can you comment on that? Are we starting to see more of a kind of an acknowledgement or intentionality around portraying diverse people and unstereotyping advertising, I guess?
Most definitely in the UK, brands are taking an active stance. I think what's really important though is it's not just about showing people from different racial backgrounds, and also, you know, showing people with disabilities, as you saw in the Tesco ad. It's about giving people an active role, and that's what this story does so beautifully. It was such a clever choice. Racism has been endemic in ballet for years. You know, it was a European white thing that you had to conform to. You know, it's not just about having the perfect figure. It's also about the color of your skin, and even down to, you know, ballet shoes, being able to get them in the right color, again, to match your legs. So it was a fantastic choice, and I was really, really pleased to see. We asked some questions to look at whether people are positive role models, and we do that by gender, so we can ask that for males and females. And this ad came out in the top 2%.
Amazing.
For both males and females. So yes, she's the young woman, and her sister, of course, who came to the rescue when she saw the heartbreak on her sister's face, are inspiring, as are, you know, the young man who also played a role in the story. So it's a really positive steps being taken by brands.
I just loved how they, you know, we've all at some point throughout this year had some plan be canceled, like for us or our kids or other members of our family, and I think they just did it really, really well. The question is, though, how well integrated was it to the brand, and and what does that mean in terms of effective advertising?
So I think that's the challenge here, as we hinted at earlier. You know, the first challenge for ads is to engage people emotionally, and we know that the more emotion people feel, the deeper they process something, so the more enduring the memories are that you create. But, you know, brands aren't in the business of entertainment. They also need those memories to be associated with the brand in some way. And unfortunately for Amazon, the role of the brand in this story in particular was just too recessive. You know, you could have replaced it with other alternatives. And if you think about what you would remember from it, was Amazon key to that? No, not really. It was the little girl who's the hero.
Yeah, exactly. The focus of that narrative is more that dynamic than it is the role of the brand. I think, Rana, you mentioned an earlier Amazon ad from a few years ago, The Imam and the Priest, and there was actually a relatively similar structure there on one level. You had you know, priest and imam who are obviously friends. They choose to buy each other a present, and they use Amazon Prime for that. And they end up buying each other accidentally the same present with knee pads. What was interesting there was the brand played a similar role, but it was a more central role in that narrative than it was this time. So these are fine margins. I think, you know, it's often easy to sound critical, and this is hard. You know, telling a great story about a brand is not an easy thing. So it is fine margins. But I think there was an interesting contrast there, and certainly a contrast with perhaps previous Amazon ads from Christmas in the UK over the last couple of years, where the actual boxes themselves were animated, which is obviously just a huge brand cue as well as being a positive thing. So, you know, there are different ways of telling a story about a brand that's emotionally powerful. But this was one which, you know, was very, very now and perhaps missed the mark in this one respect, but it's, you know, it's still a powerful piece.
Now we have a comment from Bethany. Hi, Bethany. Really interesting to see that dip in conjunction with the letdown relating to COVID. Beautiful ad for sure. And then she kind of builds on that. It is surprising how much of a backstage role the brand or the product had. So absolutely. It is hard to get that balance. And then, hi, Jordan. Thank you for speaking on this. Representation matters. Black Lives Matter. Absolutely. So as we take a step back and look at all the ads we looked at, what's worked well?
I think lots of different things have worked well, and that's what I think is so fascinating and so inspiring, I think, for marketers this year, is that creativity is about originality. Mm-hmm. If you look up a definition of creativity, it's about having original thinking and original ideas. I think the ads that have worked particularly well really tap into human insight. And I think that's another connection with the power of emotion, is really understanding people and what's relevant to them. And the ads that really connect with people, you know, we saw that in Tesco. We see that in Amazon, which, although it struggled in terms of branding, it was an really enjoyable film, really gives you a lift. And that actually came out as the most appropriate ad. in the UK. We saw nostalgia worked really well, fantasy. So I think for me, it's a celebration of where you get this beautiful fusing of creativity, human insight, and the brand strategy, sprinkled with a bit of Christmas magic. That's what's worked so well this year.
Yeah, and I endorse everything Lynne said. I think, that thank goodness there isn't only one way of doing this, right? Otherwise things would start getting a bit boring. But again, it just you had such a variety of approaches that struck a chord, and that was great. And I think if there was one unifying thing, it was this sense that a lot of them were really celebratory of Christmas and of the holiday season, and that was, I think, something that actually, Lynne, we've seen in the past as on one or two of these projects in the past, where people just really look forward to the season and being able to capture the joy of that, even in some simple ways. I mean, lots of ads with kind of family Christmases and family interaction in it do really well in various forms. So that celebratory element, which is arguably, I'd argue, isn't actually necessarily unique to Christmas. Christmas gives you an opportunity to be positive and to be celebratory, but actually that idea of kind of connect, tapping into something that's a real kind of universal and is a positive and a celebratory thing, I think works really well for brands.
And then we kind of covered it, but it warrants kind of digging deeper. What didn't work so well?
Yeah, I mean, as Lynne was saying, I think we have seen branding be an issue for ads at Christmas or in the holiday season in the past, and I think that's obviously something we've already touched on. I think there was an interesting thing for me this year, in that again, it's a bit of a tradition in the UK for the Christmas ads to be slightly kind of a tearjerker, kind of a little bit sentimental. And I think there was certainly some ads that went down more of that route this year. I don't think they, as a group, necessarily worked quite as well as perhaps some of the more celebratory ones like Tesco, for instance. That's a generalization from a relatively small number of ads, but it is interesting that the joy of the holiday season was resonating really strongly, and again speaks to me of kind of what people want right now after a
emotions. Tapping to people's emotions. Lynne, how about you? What do you think did not work so well?
There was a range of, or a number of brands that were supporting charities this year, which is a fantastic thing to see happening. There are lots of people who have suffered financially as a consequence of COVID, and that's still happening now. Families struggling to provide meals for their family every day, and so a number of brands are taking active steps to try and really make a difference, and that can benefit the brand in the long term as well. Purposeful brands outperform other brands, so a great strategic thing to do and a great thing for society and the people that will benefit. But unfortunately, what we saw with a number of the ads that tried to convey that was they didn't convey that message very well. So either it was just tagged on to the end of the ad, so it was almost a lost opportunity, or they left people feeling sad. So there was one ad that focused specifically on the charity message, trying to encourage people to donate to a charity that provides food for families, but it left people feeling sad. So the valence on that ad, which was the measure that Graham was showing you earlier, was actually quite negative. And I think it's that uplift. You want to feel you can make a difference and be inspired to make a difference. Unfortunately, that fell flat.
It's so fascinating how, it's a tough balance to get it really right. Okay, so what have we learned from these Christmas ads that that brands can take with them outside of the holiday season, and also as we look towards next year, and this pandemic continues to drag on, and unfortunately some of these economic challenges that you're referencing, Lynne, are going to continue through next year. So how should brands think about their advertising strategy for 2021? Lynne,
so I think the power of creativity and originality, brands should definitely remember that they need to do something distinctive and be brave enough to do that, because otherwise you risk not cutting through the clutter and earning attention. And telling powerful stories, especially human stories, that are underpinned by human insight is a key to that. But you need to do it in a way that's authentic, for your brand. So you've got to tell the story in a way that fits with your brand and what you're about.
Yeah, and I think just to build on that, I think it's easy for brands and advertisers to feel that they have to stay relevant, that they have to talk about the kind of the current issues of the day, and particularly where you have serious things happening like the pandemic or like a recession that many markets may face or already be in. But I think actually what the Christmas ad said to me was that, again, you don't have to take that view, and B, there are lots of different ways that you can be successful and tell emotionally powerful stories. So actually, in this case, we've seen people actually really relishing not necessarily having to dwell on COVID and not having to dwell on the year and be focused on something positive. And I think we've seen that perhaps in previous recessionary periods as well. So I think there is a tendency that people feel they have to talk about the negative, if people are facing something tough, and I don't think that's necessarily true. If you can help, if you've got something positive to say, absolutely say it. It's not true to say you don't need to talk about it at all, but if you've got campaigns or creative ideas that already work, it's not the case that they're going to stop working because people are facing tough times. So I think it's important people don't necessarily throw ideas out just because they're not speaking to the biggest issue of the day necessarily.
Absolutely. So focus on human stories, leveraging kind of deep insights in how people are feeling, and emphasizing the creative approach. Make sure you're authentic.
Yeah.
And
that emotional connection. Yeah, and that emotional connection really counts, right? It's funny, we sometimes look at the Christmas ads and think, what, on one level, why aren't they always like this, right? They show the power of a great story. But what they also show is they show the power of a great story about the brand. And so I think, I sometimes do wonder why we don't see more of this approach, because exactly. Well, yeah, it really makes it, that emotional connection makes a difference, but you do have to find that connection point, right?
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah, so I was just going to say, I think the point you said about leaving people positive and uplifting spirits is important. We saw that was an issue earlier in the year with the wave of advertising. And I thought it was fascinating that we did some research before Christmas, and we saw that people were looking forward to the advertising less than they were last year. So it was almost, and we knew people were in a dark place. They were feeling anxious, more negative feelings than positive feelings in their life. So it was going to be a challenge for Christmas ads to do that. And things like humour, can play a powerful role in advertising, and we've seen less of that globally, not just in the UK. So there's a whole suite of tools that advertisers have in their toolkit. Leverage them and help us feel good.
That's great. So to wrap things up, Graham, what is the thing you are most looking forward to in 2021?
Great question. I think hopefully we'll see more ads like this, though not necessarily about the pandemic. So
and more ads getting tested too, right?
Of course. I mean, in tough times, getting it right always counts even more than it normally does. So obviously we will look forward to that. But yeah, I am actually looking forward to being through the other side of this and seeing how that inspires the industry to tell some interesting stories.
Great. How about you, Lynne?
Yeah, I think similar. I think brands taking a more active role to make a difference to society at large is really important. And brands can do that in lots of different ways. Similarly, you've got to do it in a way that's appropriate. And not all brands are going to change the world. And even just giving us a lift of humour in our lives can make a positive difference. But I think we will see more brands making efforts and actively doing things to make a difference to society at large, and that includes things like diversity and inclusion, as well as making a difference to the environment. Yeah, let's hope we see more of that.
Yeah, absolutely. That'd be great. Well, great. I wish you both an amazing holiday season. Do you have any fun plans?
I have 2 young children, so we'll be having lots of fun. It'll be a very exciting time for me here. Awesome. How about you guys?
Graham?
Likewise, Scott. Slightly older children. My teenagers will still get excited for it though. So we'll perhaps not quite the big family celebration it would normally be, but still looking forward to spending that time together.
That's awesome. We have a family tradition. We don't necessarily celebrate Christmas, but we do have a Secret Santa tradition, which I'm sure we're going to do again this year, even though we won't be with the rest of my family. But it's definitely exciting. So thank you again for joining me. Great conversation. If you joined us, thank you for joining and thank you for engaging with us. And we'll keep the conversation going online. Thanks again. Happy holidays.
Many thanks. Best wishes to everybody.
Yeah.
Bye-bye.
Likewise.
Bye, everybody.